there's a lot of important things about Ari that I think is going to play huge in book 3. We know that she's a former student. She studied under Mandrake, and she's more than likely a shaper. A lot of that we get from her book. Was it a Slow Regard of Silent Things?
Yeah, that's it.
Slow Regard of Silent Things. But from that, when she was making the candle, I'll give you a couple lines in here. It was, but underneath there was a secret deep within the hidden heart of things. Mandrake never told her that. She did not think he knew. Ari found that secret for herself. So that gives you that Mandrake was one of her teachers, and she learned things that even he didn't seem to know. And then it goes into...
Is Mandrake a master now?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's the chemistry guy, alchemy, chemistry, alchemy type of guy. But then it was, she knew the true shape of the world. She closed her eyes. She drew her shoulders back. She took a slow and steady breath. There was tension in the air, a weight. There was no wind. She did not speak. The world grew stretched and tight. Ari drew a breath and opened her eyes. Ari was urchin small. Her tiny feet upon the stones were bare. Ari stood, and in the circle of her golden hair she grinned and brought the weight of her desire down full upon the world. And all things shook, and all things knew her will, and all things bent to please her. This is in the part when she's making the candle. It seems to indicate with she knew the true shape of the world, and then all things shook, all things knew her will, all things bent to please her. Seems like she knew some things that Mandrake didn't know. Seems like she's more than likely learned the ability to become a shaper beyond just naming. I think that's what that book is hinting at, is that she's not only a former student, she studied under Mandrake, but she's also a shaper. And so I think there's a strong likelihood that she's a shaper, which can help explain what cracked her, is if she has knowledge of at such a deep level. Because obviously naming is very dangerous. To go into shaping, you would imagine, is at least as dangerous, if not more. And so I think that is probably a partial reason for what cracked her, is the power that she is possessed. And it seems like she has an ability to look at things and understand them. She knows things when she looks at them. She knows their proper place. She knows what they belong to. And I think like when she gives Kote that key, I think some of those gifts are going to play a role in the book as we move along. I don't think they're just empty gestures like he thinks of his gifts. He's just coming up with fun playing words. She means it. She's not fucking joking.
That's what's really interesting about the nuance in itself, is that she sees these things as it's an interesting balance between something that seems childish and just game and creative and fun seems what she's doing, but then she's very serious, and she ascribes a lot of importance to her game, the little game that they play. So sometimes it seems nonsensical, but and then at the same time, I guess it seems very like serious, and there's a lot of importance assigned to it. So it's interesting to throw that into that character. And who does it also sound like? To me, it sounds like Elodin. Sounds like one of the more powerful people in the world, and he also has these childlike qualities as well. But that's really interesting, man. It's and she reads that way as just a really interesting character, even on just a cursory level. Even if you're just kind of being shallow and not trying to look into her, you can't come out of it and be like, yeah, she's just run of the mill or something. She's clearly interesting. There's more to her.
No, and like she talks about, she saw Elodin, and he was looking at the name of the wind. Yeah, that's a very good indication of that she has some power. Because like when Kote sees Elodin, before he's called the name of the wind, before he has an understanding, he just sees him staring at shit, and he doesn't understand what's going on. She sees him doing it, and she's like, he was looking at the name of the wind. which is an indication that she's not she's not just some crazy person. She's also got fucking a lot of power to her as well.
Yeah.
So
that
what
was
you guys are...
interesting.
I'm sorry,
Go
Tim.
ahead.
So what you guys are saying is really sparking something inside my head here. If Ari's this way, and it seems like she may have been a candidate for the crookery, and Elodin was definitely a person in the crookery, and now he is, well, out, but very powerful. And what you're saying about Ari seems to make sense. The more I think about what she's doing there, could it be that the university itself is actually only bringing people to a certain point, but keeping some occult knowledge hidden, and as people, certain people come close to breaking through that barrier into, from being a namer to being a shaper. Is that, am I right in saying that maybe the university is also doing something nefarious there, where they're actually suppressing that knowledge by keeping people who have the ability to shape the world, keeping them from doing that.
Could be. It could be that they got, information hidden behind the 4-plate door. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, it 100% could be that they have, obviously they have secrets. They have stuff that they're not teaching people at lower levels. Even just like simple things like Kote is not able to use certain runes for sigildry when he's at the lower levels. So they have runes and stuff that you have to be at a higher level to be able to access. So yeah, there's definitely different information that they keep from lower level students. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that they have more access to more information than others would expect. But I'm not sure on the naming and shaping thing, because it does, outside of Elodin, it doesn't seem like any of the other guys really have a full grasp of how naming even works. Like Elodin's the only one that seems like he's got, a pretty good grasp on that type of magic.
Okay.
Yeah, so, well, I was just going to say, I was actually quite taken aback, or I guess surprised in this read through, that she just, it's like, I saw Elodin listening for the wind. That kind of surprised me. And I know that, she knows who he is and from other read throughs, but I forgot that was mentioned like this early. And yeah, that definitely is very meaningful, that when she says he was, listening for the wind, this is a good night for listening for it, or a good spot or something like that. It also jumped out at me when she gave him the key and said it's for unlocking the moon. I thought that was pretty interesting. My first read through, probably didn't think much of it. I thought it was just like their little game, but obviously through reading through the books, there's a lot of mystique and mystery around the moon.
Yeah, Iax locked a piece of the moon away, piece of the name of the moon, and so yeah, it could play a part. It could have something to do with opening the lackless door, or opening the lackless box, or something along those lines. Don't know, but it would definitely not surprise me if the key plays a part. And I think that Ari could play a part in another aspect of the story, like specifically having to do with the 4-plate door, and another story that he mentions to Aaron when he was talking to Aaron. I believe it's in the second book, and Aaron says he's going to join talking about possibly joining the King's army. And he tells him, hey, I'm Kote. If you stay and listen, I'll tell you all my stories. And at one part he goes, I can tell you stories no one has ever heard before. Stories no one will ever hear again. Stories about Florian, how I learned to fight from the Adim. The truth about Princess Ariel. I know how this war started. I know the truth of it. Once you hear that, you won't be so nearly eager to run off and die in fighting in the middle of it. But the truth about Princess Ariel. So there's talk about him rescuing princesses back from Barrow Kings, and I went through in episode 11 I walked through on how the Barrow King could be
King
the
Koopa.
king. Could be King Koopa that fella dreamed about being behind the 4-plate door. So I think that it could be that the princess he rescues is Ariel. And I think Ari could be Princess Ariel. I think there's a lot of strong indications that Ari could be the Princess Ariel. Like, for one, you have all her mannerisms, her manners. They're very noble-esque. Like, Ari spread out the cloth and began to eat. She tore small pieces from the loaf and chewed them delicately, somehow making the whole process look genteel. And another part that was almost like a curtsy, almost like a tiny dance. And then a formal dinner in some nobleman's hall. She was having tea with the king. She sat with her back straight. What would she do if her tiny kingdom was invaded by a stranger? He made a curiously formal bow in return. So there's all these discussions of her, and she's always very prim and very proper. She doesn't like secondhand clothes. She won't wear clothes that someone else has worn before. She has a lot of her weird qualities are also qualities that could come from growing up noble, growing up as a princess.
And even in, like I said, I'm very early in the silent name of things. She's always talking already about doing things the proper way, and everything has to be done exactly a certain way that's proper. Yeah, that's interesting.
She's very fastidious, and she's very, like, she has this elegance about her, even though she doesn't appear that way, like, because her tattered clothes and all that stuff. But she's very much, she reads that way, and it's very rude when someone talks while they're eating. Like, they sit down, she always has everything placed precisely. There's a whole to-do about everything they do. Everything has, a dialogue about it. She kind of elevates all their discussions. That's really interesting. That really ties in pretty nicely with how I've seen her. I didn't make that connection in the past, but I could see that, her being noble.
There's also two other parts that I think lend a lot of credence to her being Ariel. One, like, when he names Ari and Elodin hears it, Elodin is obviously impressed with his naming ability. He's like, Ari, where'd you come up with that? And then that's when he was like, it seems like, maybe it wouldn't be a waste of time to teach you.
Yeah, and to teach him to be a namer.
Yeah. So, like, it gives an indication that the name he gave her is close to her actual, her calling name. But another aspect of it is she was possibly raped. There's discussion where it was, she says, she knew if you weren't always stepping lightly as a bird, the whole world came apart to crush you, like a house of cards, like a bottle against stones, like a wrist pinned hard beneath a hand with the hot breath smell of wanton wine, which is a very clear indication that she possibly was raped.
That's a hell of an imagery right there.
Yeah. So she was possibly raped, and then there's when he rescues the two girls from the fake root troop. It was Kren and Elle. And he talks about Kren, he describes as looking like Denna. And then Elle is obviously cracked. She's broken. And she's got long golden hair. And she's got an Ari quality to her. It seems very much that it's an allegory between Denna and Ari.
Well, and she's a daughter of a mayor, right?
Yeah. Which could lead that, that's where it's going. Like, it could lead that Elle is the, Ari's the princess, whereas, Elle was the mayor's daughter. So, and Denna was the, just kind of the, other girl that was raped. But so there's a strong connection between Ari and Denna and El and Kren, down to their looks. But also, when you combine Ari and El, Ari plus El, Ariel.
So
which is Princess Ariel.
So you've piqued my interest here, Dan. So what else can you tell us about Princess Ariel herself?
Well, that's the unfortunate thing, is that is the only mention of her in the books.
Okay.
Well, what about the Disney movies? I mean, there's a whole thing with Princess Ariel, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't want to ruin book 3 by talking,
okay.
by spelling it out exactly what's going to happen. Obviously, we know what's going to happen, but yeah, you just ruined it for anybody who didn't put put it together.
Okay. Anyway, You've been using the dingle hopper.
What? Huh?
That's
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Testing your Disney knowledge there. Also,
yeah, I don't really know.
Ariel's the name of an angel. It may be here nor there.
Yeah. There's other theories. I'll go into more theories on Ari. I'll leave it at that one for this one. But there's theories about her possibly being an angel as well. Not angel Ariel, but an angel. But I think that's probably the strongest connection, that could be a princess, someone from nobility. Maybe the princess he rescues is not actually a princess. Maybe that's just similar to how his stories all get inflated into something else. But I think I think Ari might be from nobility or be a princess, and that she's going to get behind the 4-plate door or something along those lines. And maybe she gets into it from the under thing. She gets in like through a back door, and then he has to get in through the 4-plate door to save her. I think that could be an explanation. Obviously, it's just pure conjecture. I don't have evidence to say that he's definitely that's what's going to happen. But yeah, it could. It very well could be that something happens with her getting behind the 4-plate door, and he has to go in there to rescue her.
I like it, Dan.
That's a good. Out of many of the theories I've heard, that there's a lot of solid connections with that speculation. I could see a lot of it. I mean, there's a lot of reasoning that ties in with Fellas,
Princess Ariel, Ari, all three, the 4-plate door, all of those. Very well, you could connect all those dots and put them all together, and to come up with something. So
this Princess Ariel, that has a connection to the Bellamy thing we were talking. Baron Bellamy.
Yeah, Bill Bellamy.
Yeah, Bellamy Baron.
So if you do Google it, by the way, Bill Bellamy's son, Baron Bellamy.
Kaboom!
How do you like that? Yeah. Kaboom is right.
That's incredible.
It is incredible.
Baron Bellamy. Bill Bellamy.
I don't like it at all.
Bill Bellamy, Baron Bellamy, kaboom.
Bobby Bonilla, still being paid by the Mets.
Yep. For a few more years. I looked into it after we got off. For a few more years. Very interesting.
Fantastic.
Very interesting.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you get also one of the theories on Ari from this particular chapter, because when she calls out his name and he looks up and he sees Ari, it's like Ari standing there, a silhouette against the night sky, her fine hair made a cloud around her head. A lot of people take that to be like a halo over her head, like an angel. And so that's a partial aspect of why there's debate on, is she an angel? So like the two big angels that people guess that she might be, one was Ardal. Ordal was described as the youngest of them all, who had never seen a thing die, stood bravely before Aleph, her golden hair bright with ribbon. So obviously Ari's got golden hair. So young and golden hair, and that's one of the angels that people think she might be. And then also Gisa, fair Gisa, who had 100 suitors in Bellin before the walls fell, the first woman to know the unasked for touch of man. So people think that Bellin could be where the university is, and that Ari's in the under thing. And Ari in her story, in the slow regarded silent things, like I mentioned, like there's a description that makes it sound like Ari might have been raped. And so the first woman to know the unasked for touch of man. I think that stuff's reaching.
I was going to say, she's a fallen angel?
Like an angel, but here's the problem with it. The way they describe angels, like the great debate about whether you can see angels all the way back in episode 8. I don't think that just you could easily see her if she was an angel. Maybe like if she's like,
well, that's why I say
Telu reborn as Minda and she's reborn as Ari. So maybe it is Ordal born in human form or Gisa born in human form. Maybe I just don't see any evidence for it. And
if she's an angel, she seems to be off the track, off her track of what she's supposed to be doing. But like you said, if she was raped,
it just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense to me why she would be an angel, and I think the evidence is just, it's so circumstantial, and it doesn't seem like it would be necessary to the story. Whereas I think that the theory that she could be Princess Ariel is much stronger and would make much more sense, and you could put it together with maybe she gets behind the 4-plate door. He has to go behind the 4-plate door to save her. Shit starts to unravel from there. That eventually leads to him opening the Lackless door. And, you could see a train of events spiraling out from her being Princess Ariel. I just don't see anything just off of her being an angel.
She is really interesting. I mean, the fact that we don't actually know her name is really interesting in itself. There's a little bit of Elodin in her. You know what I mean? Like her sleepless mind seems to be running the show. Or her sleeping mind, whatever. Seems to be running the show. So we get a lot.
She seems to be a shaper. I mean, seems to have power. She's a former student, but she's discovered knowledge that Mandrake didn't have. She seems to be able to do things that are not normal at all. She seems to be powerful. I think there's a reason her mind cracked. I don't think it was just she was raped and she's just kind of broken inside. It seems to be more than that. It seems to be something much more substantial than, obviously being raped would be substantial, but I'm talking about just in the nature of this world for what being cracked means. Yeah. I think it's more substantial than that.
Well, I would say from what Rothfuss has built in, with the example that we get that's clear is the guy that was Elodin's Giller. Yeah. That leads us to believe that she has probably a capability to do things that are tremendous. And what she did that was tremendous would have then cracked her. And the fact that she's so young would mean that she's, again, that leads us to believe that then she would be she has tremendous capability. On a level
and the fact that Elodin takes an interest in her, and when she sees Elodin looking at the name of the wind, she sees him looking at the name of the wind. Like she doesn't just see him as just staring out into the void like a weirdo. Like she sees what he was doing. So there's clearly more to her than just a broken girl that got raped and now I've gone crazy. It's more than that.
I mean, you're right. What you were saying in the beginning is we get a lot about their relationship here. And if this is the second time, then it's very effective with what lives in the salt and in Kavos mine, trace minerals, chromium, basalt, malleum, iodine, everything your body needs but probably can't get from apples and bread and whatever you manage to scrounge up when I can't find you. Which this leads, I mean, that in itself is he's caring for her. Basically, it makes us feel like he's keeping her alive.
Yeah, it shows the difference between her gifts to Kavoth versus his to her. He's
more
just
practical. Yeah.
playing word games, and it's like a poetry behind a gift.
But that's
like
interesting.
Having to come up with some music behind the gift, but hers, there's something different. Like that coin, she's like, I brought you a feather with the spring wind in it, but since you're late, she looked at me gravely. You get a coin instead. And she said it will keep you safe at night as much as anything can. That is, it was shaped like a Turin penance piece, but it gleamed silver in the moonlight. I'd never seen a coin like it. There's something different about her gifts versus what he gives her.
Well, what's interesting though is even him playing. Let's say he's just playing a word game with her. He has to do it. And it makes me think of when he's with the Adem, because he plays their game, but then he does it well. And when he does it well, he discovers spinning leaf. And he discovers a way to waken his sleeping mind. And then how he can have control over the name of the wind. So it's taking him down the path that Elodin was trying to take him down with the Adem. But I feel like that's part of what's happening here too as well. And I think if I'm going to start to... that makes me realize that I should start to read into much more deeply what he is actually saying and how he evolves in his discussions with Ari, because it wouldn't surprise me if you can make some connections to how he evolves through their conversations to actually be going down that route of naming.
Yeah, I mean, because it seems like that's what she's doing, some form of naming, shaping. That's obviously how her mind's working. And he's playing the game, so his mind is like almost subconsciously learning these things and getting more attuned to these things, but he's not doing it intentionally, where she is.
It's such a great way for Rothfuss to subtly reveal to us. I mean, he's kind of doing to us what Elodin's trying to do for Kavoth, by using Ari, because we look at Ari as this little waifish, broken girl. So we take everything she says with massive, grain of salt. So we're not really 100% believing, but on further read-throughs, we start to realize there is more to her. And that's what we're talking about now. But then we start to to deliver to us another piece of the sleeping mind, or naming through the subtlety of a character like her, is a really, really interesting way to do it, because it plays on the subject in itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you also get that you get that she's not defenseless in this chapter, that she's not, completely crazy. She's got her wits about her. Like their interaction. There was a big fire. A lot of it went down the grates. Did you see it? Holy God, yes. She said, her eyes wide. It was all over, and all the shrews and raccoons were running everywhere trying to get out. Did any of it get on you? I asked. Did you get burned? She shook her head, grinning a child's sly smile. Oh no, it couldn't catch me. Were you close to the fire? I asked. Did you breathe any of the smoke? Why would I breathe smoke? Ari looked at me as if I were simple. The whole under thing smells like cat piss now. But I love that her just like, what? Why would I do that? That's stupid. After he did that.
Yeah. That's pretty great.
That's exactly what he did. And he was like, what a stupid mistake. And she's just like, why would I do that? That is so stupid.
It's very revealing that because you feel like he feels like she's not in control, and she's at the whim of, with her smoke down there, she's going to be fucked. It's like, I know what I'm doing. If I see smoke, I run. And am I going to breathe it? No. What am I, an idiot?
The fact that she was able to, she was easily able to protect herself, and then just the idea of like even just breathing in smoke was just like so stupid to her. It gave you the impression that she could take care of her fucking self.
Yeah.
Kavoth's like helping her out and shit, but she's obviously been taking care of herself before he got there, and she could do it, without him.
I mean, again, there's little subtleties, but even like with when she says, "Hello, Mola, would you like an apple?" and then she just trots off, like she just leaves, but comes back with an apple. Like, this is her terrain, you know what I mean? Like she takes care of this area. I don't know. It's a subtle. It's a little thing, but she has this independence. She owns this area. She's named all these places. There's Bellows. There's Underthing. There's all these. She owns this area basically in her own. It's her own little world.
Yeah, she's fucking great. I love her character. She's funny in it, and her quirkiness is funny. She's strong and vulnerable. She's complex, and so she's a really interesting character.
Well, and so there's a couple pieces here that speak to what you've been saying about her possibly being royalty. Is Ari nodded, satisfied, sat down, spreading out the small cloth and arranging her food with the same care as always. I watched her as she began to eat, dipping a green bean into the salt before taking a bite. But then also, after she eats her meal, it's like, now play. I mean, now that it's in my mind that she's like royalty, that feels like, something that someone of royalty would do. They just, now it's time.
Yeah, entertain me.
Yeah,
snap to
exactly.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
I think that the case for her being Princess Ariel is very strong, just especially because it just seems weird that he's going to bring in a princess that hasn't been brought in the first two books, that he's going to have to build up, that we're going to have to give a shit about, and it just seems like it would take more space than he has available to finish the story. It seems like that most of these characters of importance in the third book have to have already been introduced in these first two books. It doesn't seem like he's got a lot of room to be bringing in a bunch of new characters that we haven't heard about before.
No, you're right. I mean, when I start to think about these arcs and how he's going to have to tie it all in and then kind of not necessarily wrap it up, because hopefully we'll keep going, but I feel like the book's going to be as long as book 2.
Yeah, and according to him, it's going to be shorter, so that really makes me believe that we've met most of the characters, that there's not going to be a lot, or we've at least heard about them. Even if we haven't met them, we've heard about them in the world, and like we've heard the name Princess Ariel, but we haven't heard her mentioned in the world. Like, we've heard King Roderick mentioned a few times. So, like, it's not going to surprise me that he's going to meet King Roderick. I think that's fucking baked into the cake. But, like, Princess Ariel is she's just her name's been mentioned. Like, there's no whispers of, there's this Princess Ariel off in blah, blah, blah. And, like, so there's been no foreshadowing of her in the world in the midst of his story. It's only been out, when he's in the bar outside of his story that he's brought her up. So it'd be, because even with Florian, we don't meet her to the second book, but he mentions Florian constantly, a number of times before we meet her. So the fact that he hasn't been bringing up Ariel through 2 books other than one line leads me to believe that she is someone we've already met. And Ari is, the clearest case for that.
But and it also speaks to, his subtlety, because he's definitely not hitting us over the head with it. I didn't pick it up until you had mentioned it, but now I see the connections quite clearly. But I think she's a poet as well. When she describes, part of that is just the way she describes everything, but particularly when she tries to get Mola to stay, she has to hear him play. Oh, you mustn't go. His voice is like a thunderstorm, and his hands know every secret hidden beneath the cool, dark earth. Or also, maybe she can see what we've talked about before, which is his abilities in music is not just playing beautiful music. He's controlling things. It's like you said, it's like a sort of naming. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's shaping, but yeah, I think she's a shaper, but I think also probably a namer. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. And then, we get Mola asking, like, why haven't you told anybody? Someone would do something, and Kote's like, come on, be fucking real. They're gonna fucking throw her in the fucking the insane asylum and lock her away, and you know full well that's what they're going to do. And then you get another hint of who she is when she's like, I shook my head, it won't work. I brought her a secondhand dress a couple span ago. She says wearing someone else's clothes is filthy. Mola looked puzzled. She didn't look sealedish, not even a little. Maybe she was just raised that way. Do you feel any better? Yes, I lied. But so the fact that Mola is puzzled and takes note of the fact that she won't wear secondhand clothes, I think that is also a huge indication that she is of nobility, of a higher station, that she's not, obviously it seems like it's a sealedish, part of their culture is they don't wear other people's clothes. But I think she's obviously, she's not sealedish, but I think it's part of how she was raised as a princess, as a upper echelon society person that would not even need to wear secondhand clothes. Like, she's always wore firsthand clothes, and it was probably bred into her that wearing other people's clothes was gross. It was beneath her.
Or like it wouldn't even be a thing that I could see it also if it was never even a possibility or a need. Then she would just it would seem kind of gross. Like, why the fuck would I wear someone else's clothes?
Yeah, she describes it as filthy. She looks down her nose at it, and she's living in the, basically the sewers.
Yeah. She's definitely got...
That leads me to believe, I think that's strong evidence that it's a nobility thing.
Well, but it's also interesting because when you do read her book specifically, or the Slow Regard of Silent Things, that is her world down there. She rules that world, and she bestows power and significance on anything she finds. You know what I mean? It's not like it's interesting. Yeah, you see her. She's a homeless wreck, is what she basically looks like. She didn't see herself like that at all. She's the queen of her world, in the world that is hers, which is she's living in a place no one else lives. I mean, she is basically a homeless person with pretty extravagant, really nice place for you to be underneath this place, where there's certain places that have warmth. There's some comfort that's provided just by that world that exists down there. But I mean, in her mind, she's the queen of that world. It's very interesting. And like I was just saying, she also, anything she finds, she bestows upon it and entitles it to something of great significance, even if it's just a gear that she found, or a key, or whatever it is.
Yeah, she sees, it's described in a way that she sees the shape of the world, where things should be, what their proper place is, and she sees the world through different eyes than a normal person.
That reminds me from that book. I've only read it the one time. It was a long time ago, but she will place things that she finds, and then she'll look at it for a while and realize that it doesn't work there, and then she'll barely move it, and then realize, oh, that's where it's supposed to be. Like, it finds its place.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's really interesting character. I've never read, I don't think I've ever read in anything I've ever read that a character quite like Ari.
No, I'm not. I can't think of anyone else that I would compare to her, because, she's strong, brave, vulnerable, complex, in a terrible situation, but making the best situation out of it.
Well, it's really interesting to have someone who's physically weak but mentally headstrong, and have great
broken,
self-confidence.
at the same time broken.
And also, it's really, to have that self-confidence. Well, then that's like Kavoth in a way, right? They're both have supreme self-confidence, but then at the same time, they're also broken.
Yeah.
So they fit together.
Yeah, they go good together. It's very natural that Kvothe would be drawn to her, that he would care a lot for her, because she does share some similarities with him. And Elodin being drawn to her makes sense as well. Like, yeah, it all fits together well. But she's an extremely complex character that is extremely interesting. Very curious what's in store for her in book 3. I don't think it's a lot of good. And also, we know at the end of the Slow Regarded Silent Thing, she discusses like the gift that she comes up with. The whole story is about the gift she's trying to come up for Kvothe, and it ends up being like a bed in her under thing, and she thinks like there's gonna come a time where he's gonna need a place to hide, and he's gonna need a new name, and just like he gave me a new name, I'll give him a new name. So that makes me think that she's going to play some kind of role in the transition from Kvothe to Kote.
I wonder if in her backstory, Elodin knows, like, is familiar with her in terms of what she was capable of, and when he says, "Wait, did Fella change her name? Wait, did you? You don't change her name." I wonder if Ari changed her name, and that's why she's like kind of suppressed or in this locked-in state, because we see what happened.
I think she's cracked. I think she's like his student. I don't like. It seems like she still has access to her powers and stuff like that. But what it does make me think, the fact that it seems like she's a shaper, I think this is probably the best guess on one of the not the best guess. One of the best guesses on why Kvothe can't use his powers. Maybe she uses her ability as a shaper to change him, to fundamentally change him, so that he can't do whatever he does to fuck shit up again. She does something to fundamentally change him so that he can't ever do it again.
That was very humble of you to say that, and instead of being the best, it might be one of the best. Very humble.
Well, because I have other guesses too, so.
Yeah, but I mean, you're just showing that
all my guesses are really good. I hate to put one of my babies over another.
Jesus Christ! Then you just wiped away the humility. It's gone.
Oh, no, I'm very humble about it, though. I'm very, very humble about it. More humble than you could possibly be.
I gotta read the Slow Regarded Silent Things again, because I'm missing out, because when you mentioned that a bed and he's gonna change his name, that's so much more meaningful to me now than what it would have been years ago when I read it, because I hadn't made so many of these connections. I mean, I'd only read the other 2 books once, so I hadn't I hadn't been making these connections. Yeah, I need to go back through it, but yeah, that's very interesting, man. And yeah, I mean, speaking of, his style, it makes sense that he would assign great importance to a character like this. I mean, it's so interesting to do it to someone who, if someone read these books one time, hadn't thought about them again until they pick up the 3rd book, they remember Ari, they know who she is, they probably in their mind don't assign great importance to her because she's in the background. Right? I mean, she's literally, physically, either on the rooftops or underneath things. She's not live in the moment, in the big moments that Kvothe goes through, but she's there and she's capable of something. You can feel it. So it's really interesting to have big things come out of her or be connected to her. That would be a very interesting move for Rothfuss to make. So yeah, I think we're definitely onto something there. If she didn't make a single appearance in book 3, I'd be freaking shocked.
Yeah, it'd be super weird.
It'd be.
She's like Savoy in book 2, where Savoy just disappears.
Well, I mean,
in book 2,
but
she just disappears in book 3. No more mention of her.
Well, it's kind of like with Puppet. I mean, he's mentioned quite a few times. He has a tremendous appearance, and that's it. Then he's just he's not legend because he exists. I mean, he's there, but his influence is felt, And then there's a tremendous, I don't know if it's a full chapter with him, but his presence when he's physically there is amazing. And that's all we get.
Yeah, so, I think he will definitely. I would be shocked if he doesn't play a part in book 3. Ari is definitely going to play a part in book 3.
It seems like she has to, yeah.
I think the best guess is that she's going to play a part in the transition from Kvothe to Kote. That like her ability to know, like she knew Kvothe was coming to see her in this situation, and she was just like, "You're late." But Kvothe did not know he was going to see her.
Yeah. Well,
and
it's
like, and then when she's like in the underthing in her own book, she's like, he's coming in such and such days. It's not like Kvothe is like, I'm coming in,
it's not like
these amount of days. She just knows it. And then she's like, oh shit, he's not coming tomorrow. He's coming today. Or he's not coming in 2 days. He's coming tomorrow, whatever it was.
So maybe,
and like she knows these things. And so she when she says she knows that there's going to be a time that he's going to need a place to hide. I think that's what I think that could be likely what happens is when the person he kills, that the guy's like, the stone is shattered, the cobblestones is shattered. It can't be mended. I think after that moment, he might go hide under the underthing to get away from it. And then he's like, I did this terrible thing. There's something wrong with me. And she's like, I'll give you a new name. And she changes who he is.
This is what I think. I think he goes down there, he brings Will and Sim, and she creates the boy band for the three of them. And then the boys are back in town, as you said. And then that eventually evolves into the wrestling campaign.
Yeah. That's exactly how it goes. They create a boy band. They're going. Good times are going. Then they kind of fizzle out. Their second album doesn't sell so well, so he becomes a bar owner. Develops a drinking problem. Decides to use his ADM skills to become a wrestler. To try to become like a guy that can, he signs up for some event to be a wrestler to win some money, and then he just becomes this fat, fucking drunk wrestler.
We see it in one of the interlude chapters with the two soldiers where he does fairly well, but not well enough to, beat these guys up. That speaks of a guy that's going to do professional wrestling.
Staged.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So he can do the moves, just not well enough to, actually win these bouts where, your ass is on the line. So choreographed.
All coming into place. The boy band to the drunk bar owner to the movie like The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, solid. I never saw that, but
it's basically the story of Kvothe. Yeah, and I like they talk about when he's looking, he's exploring all the different tunnels. He's trying to find the tunnel into the archives, obviously. And he like finds one where, there's iron grates blocking the way down. There's clearly areas that they've blocked off that they don't want Corden into. So I'm curious. That's why I think that Ari might get into behind the 4-plate door through the underthing. Is I think that might be the way she fucking gets back behind the 4-plate door, because I think she's.
Oh,
I think it's highly likely that one of the princesses that he's going to rescue from the Barrel King is Ari.
That's
and I think
crazy.
That it might be that the underthing is what leads her to it.
That's crazy that I hadn't. It seems so obvious now to have made that connection. I mean, I understood what you had said before, where she's the princess with the Barrel King. It all makes sense in terms of the logical progression with what Rothfuss hints at. But I hadn't pieced together that she could find another way in there because she's so intimately connected with the underthing. I mean, this is her place. This is her world. That makes total sense that she would sort of find a way in there, and now she's held captive.
Yeah, so the next big part is he runs into Ari, and one of the aspects of it is tied into why some people believe she's an angel. I've talked about it before on one of the episodes where it was, Ari sat on a wide brick chimney waiting for me. She wore the dress I had bought her and swung her bare feet idly as she looked up at the stars. Her hair was so fine and light and made a halo around her head, drifting on the faintest whisper of a breeze. So people tie in that halo around the head to angels, but there's nothing in the books that even talks about angels having a halo over their head in this world. It's not, they just take in angels have halos because that's, the thought around it in our world. That's kind of how like a lot of the pictures are drawn and that kind of thing. So I think they're reaching. I don't think there's any evidence that she's an angel. And if she was an angel, what is she doing? Like, they're supposed to be delivering justice to the world, and she's just chilling in the sewers in this rundown old city. Like, what the fuck? How is she an angel?
It's interesting you mentioned that about her hair, because I've been thinking about it. The way it's described, what it actually kind of reminds me of is Kavos' magic cloak. Kind of reminds me of that. But, could just be her hair is all wild because she's not getting it cut or anything, or if she is, she's doing it herself, and it's just wispy, and she's out above things, and, just wisp around in the wind. But the fact that he mentions it so repeatedly does kind of remind me of that, and, also he mentions he looks at her as his little moon fae. You've mentioned quite a few little things that does suggest that she could be possibly of the fae. So who knows? I mean, that could be something. I don't know. But yeah, it gets mentioned so much that it does start to make you think there's something else about it. I don't buy the angel bit, but yeah, maybe she's wearing a shade swim cap. I mean, that's what it is, right?
Speaking of swim, it's always mentioned in an interesting or funny way too, like she's swimming. Like I think he mentions it maybe in this chapter. Or maybe in a previous one, but it's like her hair moves when she turns her head like it would when someone's in a pool of water.
Or underwater, yeah. Yeah, I think underwater. I remember hearing that too, yeah.
So, the other thing I liked about
I don't know if there's anything to her hair other than she's got light, fine hair that blows around in the breeze. I don't think there's anything magical to it, but I think it's just giving that wild touch to her. Like, she doesn't cut her hair, so it's real fucking long and fine and shit, and so yeah, fucking's gonna blow around and shit. So I think it just is reiterating this is a wild fucking child.
But Rothfuss or Kavoth, however you want to look at it, it's like every time that Ari's mentioned, at least once it's mentioned that her hair blows in a funny way, or I mean, I don't know, what it means, or if she's an angel or whatever, but I do think it's funny that he mentions the way her hair is every time.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that would tie that to something magical. I mean, if you see people with really long hair, it's always, if they don't have it like in a ponytail or wetted down or got something in their hair, it fucking blows all over the fucking place. They look like fucking weirdos.
I was gonna say, I mean, it's simply the repeated mentionings. I mean, we get it puts us in a place as readers. I mean, we get to the point where it's like when something gets repeated, you're like, all right, now I'm starting to think there's something to this. That's what it causes me to start to think about it. And I'm mainly, I've thought about it. I wasn't even going to mention it. I mean, maybe eventually, but I wasn't planning on mentioning it until you mentioned that you think she's an angel. And then that made me think, maybe then I guess I'll mention it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of interesting the way that he talks about it. But yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot to it. I mean, sexy, Kavoth has sexy ass hands. Dennis got sexy ass ears, and
she's got wild ass hair.
She got some wild. You know who else has wild hair? Manette. He's got some wild hair. It doesn't wisp around. It just kind of stands up like this dude looks like a psychopath. It seems.
Haven't he's got the magic eyebrows? I just think he Rothfuss keys in on some physical traits on every single person. Yeah, this is one of those chapters I've been looking forward to getting into, because some of the things I've touched on with Ari, now I'll more fully delve into. Because I mentioned in the last episode how after Ari went and saw Kavoth from his, in his room when he was in the midst of the plumbob experience, and he's crying about his family, and she takes care of him. In between that point and this point is the slow regard of silent things. That's the time frame when this happens. So these gifts that she gives Kavoth are from that story. And so, it starts off with, Ari wasn't expecting me, but this was the first place I'd met her, and on clear nights, she sometimes came out to watch the stars. I checked to make sure the classrooms overlooking the courtyard were dark and empty, then I brought my lute and began to tune it. So he says Ari wasn't expecting me, but she was. She says it explicitly. And so, before we go, I'll bring up the parts in her book where it shows that she does have some sort of, clairvoyance or knowledge. It was, she ran toward me, her bare feet skipping lightly across the tar, her hair blowing behind her. I heard you, she said. She came close. I heard you all the way down in vaults. I seem to remember, I said slowly, that I was going to play music for someone. Me! She held both her hands close to her chest, grinning. She moved from foot to foot, almost dancing with eagerness. Play for me! I've been as patient as 2 stones together, she said. You're just in time. I could not be as patient as 3 stones. And then he talks about, I brought you 3 things. And she's like, how traditional, she said, grinning. You're quite the proper young gentleman tonight. And so he gives her bees, he said, he gives her the bottle of beer that were made from bees and brewers in Braden, which I always think is interesting, is, these mentions of Braden, and then, obviously I think Braden's an extremely important figure, whether he's Master Ash or he's not. I think he's obviously an important figure. So the fact that there's a Braden beer and there's brewers in Braden, and then he chose the name Braden, there might be something to that. I don't know what it is, but I would be surprised if he's just putting that in there and there's nothing to it. I think when we read book 3, we'll see some kind of connection between him and what they're mentioning there. But
probably the beer that he got from the Aeolian the other night too, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think that's where he got it. Yeah. But yeah, and then he gave her the barley bread, and she's like, you also got the 3 bees. So he gave her the bees, brewers, and Braden. He went with the alliteration there. So obviously, Fitz gets his alliteration. He gives her smoked salmon because he thinks she can't get meat, which is not actually the case. She could if she wanted it, but he gives her the salmon. It has a harp instead of a heart, and she looked down at it. No wonder it looked so surprised. She's got some kind of hilarious quirks of personality. But let me pull up my notes on A Slow Regard of Silent Things, because I think these are significant into understanding what's going on in this scene. So there's a scene where she is carrying her gear. She's finally, come to the conclusion that this gear is a fulcrum, and it's an important piece. She feels like she finally understands this thing, and she starts taking it around the under thing, and she drops it, and it breaks. It shatters to pieces, and she's scared to look at it. And then you get slowly Ari's face broke too. It broke into a grin so wide you'd think she ate the moon. Oh yes, Fulcrum had broken, but that wasn't wrong. Eggs break, horses break, waves break. Of course he broke. How else could someone so all-certain centered let his perfect answers out into the world? Some things were just too true to stay. Fulcrum lay in 3 bright pieces, 3 jagged shapes with 3 teeth each. No longer a pin struck hard into the heart of things. He had become 3 things. If anything, her grin grew wider then. Oh, of course. It wasn't something she was looking for. No wonder all her searching was for naught. No wonder everything was canted wrong. It was 3 things. He was bringing 3, and so must she. 3 perfect threes would be her gift for him. Ari's brow furrowed, and she turned to look up the stairs. The gear had struck the 7th step. Fulcrum had shattered it quite flagrantly. Not 7, then. Another thing she had been wrong about. He wasn't coming on the 7th day. He would visit her today. Some other time that knowing might have sent her spinning badly out of true. It would have set her all a-sweat and tangled beyond all hope, but not today, not with the truth so sweetly set before her, not with everything so sudden plain for her to see. 3 things was easy if you knew the way of it. Ari was so whelmed it took her several minutes before she realized she was standing, or rather, she realized that the stairway finally knew where it was. She knew what it was, where it belonged. It had a name. She was in Ninewise. So she had been thinking that Kvothe is coming in 7 days throughout the whole story of Slow Regard of Silent Things. And then she breaks this and she looks at it and she realizes that he's going to bring her 3 gifts and that he's coming today and not tomorrow. And we get at the beginning of this chapter, Ari did not know, in Kvothe's mind, Ari did not know I was coming today. But she did. She says it right there. She realized he was coming today without any knowledge from Kvothe. It was from this thing shattering. And she looked at it and the world presented her with knowledge she hadn't seen before. She knew he was going to give her 3 gifts and she knew he was coming today. That's significant information that clearly tells you that Ari is something different. She's something special. She has power.
So there's no other clue than that. I mean, what was Fulcrum?
It was like a gear. It was a gear she found.
Yeah, in the water. That whole scene was strange as well. Her bringing that up to the surface, but so there's no other answer or clue to it other than she's clairvoyant. However she saw that, we don't know. She just saw it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand her power, but she's clearly has power because there's no. How else would she know these things? Like these are not. This is not information that she heard it. She spied it off of someone. This is information that it would be impossible to know. Yet she did know it, and she's right.
Was there any clue as to why she thought he was coming that day?
No, I didn't make any. It just occurs that's what I read. Her. Like I don't know what her power is, but she's obviously got power because she's right.
One of the things I remembered a feeling from her book was she seems to come into tune with things, and you sort of mentioned that in what you read there. That it's. She's always, it seems like she's always sort of grasping and trying to get things to fit. And then once they fit, she gets clairvoyance or something. I don't know exactly either. I mean, but I remember getting that feeling like she creates a harmony of things. And and that's kind of what she drives at, is trying, kind of everybody in a way, to trying to create a harmony within how they perceive things and how they interpret or interact with the world. And when she does it, she seems to get a clairvoyance, or if things fit the way they're supposed to fit, and then things happen the way they should happen for her, right? Or
it seemed like when she
is the now coming or whatever.
What I gathered was when she had manipulated things into certain positions, she it eventually, at some point, when she manipulated it in the right way, she would get a feeling of knowing that it's right and other information from there.
Well, you get like in the beginning, it gives you a sense of like someone who's OCD. Guy,
Yeah.
that's what it seems like. But then the fact that when this happens and you get that OCD thing, but it gives her knowledge of things that she couldn't possibly have knowledge of. That he's going to bring her three gifts, that he's going to show up today. And this is information that she could not get, from just looking at that. This is not information we would be able to look at a gear break and we're like, oh, it turns out Tim's coming over today and he's going to bring me 3 gifts. Like, no, it's a magical quality. So then that takes you back where you're like, well, shit, it's not OCD. She's just different. She sees the world through different eyes, and she has a power to be able to see things. And then it takes on a new weight. And then you start looking at like, okay, so what exactly is going on? And then you get more information from her that I think is very pertinent to book 3. Is like you get from Port, she brought his fine teacup. She brought the leather book, uncut, unread, and utterly unknown. She brought the small stone figurine. All 3 of these she set upon the shelf beside his bed, and he would have some beauty of his own. And just like that, she had a gift for him, a safe place, he could say. So that's her first gift is she sees he's going to need a safe place to stay. And then, after all that he had done, didn't he deserve fine and princely gifts? That line I think is important, and also bringing her to that she is a princess, like that. There's a lot of interactions in this scene with Kote and Elodin that lend further weight to it, and also she's thinking of a gift for him, and doesn't he deserve a princely gift? That's just how her mind works, so it lends some weight to that. But when she's making the gifts for him, and she goes into the second gift, she's going to make him a candle. She's like, she knew the proper way for Laurel. So she's thinking of like what she could put in this candle to make it. And she's like, she knew the proper way for Laurel. She knew the patient way of things. Grind and boil the waxy fruit. Sieve off the dottle. Boil again and clarify and cool to separate the wax. Even with the proper tools, it would have been hours of work. Hours and hours, but he was coming soon. She knew she had no time for it. And even if she had all day, there would be principles inside the wax that were not right for him. He was plumb full of anger and despair and pride. Well, he had that in a sure and certain surfeit. There were ways to factor those things out. She knew them all. She knew the turning circles of calcinate. She could sublime and draw. She could isolate a non-exclusionary principle as well as any who had ever turned their hand to work the craft. But this was not a time for begging favors from the moon. Not now. She could not rush, and neither could she be delayed. Some things were simply too important. It was just as Mandrag said. 9/10 of alchemy was chemistry, and 9/10 of chemistry was waiting. The other piece, the slender 10th part of a 10th, the heart of alchemy, was something Ari had learned long ago. She studied it before she came to understand the true shape of the world, before she knew the key to being small. Oh yes, she learned her craft. She knew its hidden roads and secrets, all the subtle, sweet, and coaxing ways that made one skilled within the art. So many different ways. Some folk inscribed, described. There were symbols, signifiers, buying and the binding, formulae, machineries of math. But now she knew much more than that. She knew so much of what she thought was truth before was merely tricks, no more than clever ways of speaking to the world. They were a bargaining, a plea, a call, a cry, but underneath there was a secret deep within the hidden heart of things. Mandrag never told her that. She did not think he knew. Ari found that secret for herself. She knew the true shape of the world. All else was shadow and the sound of distant drums. Ari nodded to herself. Her tiny face was grave. She scooped the waxy fine ground fruit into a sieve and set the sieve atop a gather jar. She closed her eyes. She drew her shoulders back. She took a slow and steady breath. There was a tension in the air, a weight. There was no wind. She did not speak. The world grew stretched and tight. Ari drew a breath and opened her eyes. Ari was urchin small. Her tiny feet upon the stone were bare. Ari stood, and in the circle of her golden hair she grinned and brought the weight of her desire down full upon the world. And all things shook, and all things knew her will, and all things bent to please her. That's massively significant because that is a clear sign that she is a shaper. Like, she did not have time to make the candle and go through, the proper steps of, the chemistry and the alchemy to make the candle. And she's like, I could make it. And even if I had the time, there would be principles in it that I wouldn't, that are not right for him. And, to pull them out would even take more time. And so, like, she just doesn't have the time. So when she doesn't have the time, she's like, man, fuck it. I got to use my magic. And she does.
Dude, so that's huge on so many levels because it tells us what she's capable of. Also, it tells me in terms of her character that she's of the, however it's attainable, she's immensely powerful because of her capability, and she knows it. But also, we get to see, as plain as we can possibly see what shaping is and how it's done. And obviously it's still very ethereal, but there it is. That's her doing it. Yeah, it's that book's great, man. It's so it's very lyrical and very visual, and it's tremendous. It's her character's so interesting, man, and that helps me sort of see. So build out of that and sort of picture Ajax or whoever, Ajax creating the Fae. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like picture that, and then picture. It's tremendous, man. It's fucking great. It's hard. It's hard to verbalize where that sends my mind. Rothfuss is killing it.
Yeah, I'll double down on you there, Tim. Everything it opens up a huge door to something that we've learned zero about. We can all talk about what the things that they've spoken of, the shapers and shaping the Fae, and pretty much that's it. But if you delve into that book and Ari, you realize that there's a whole other side to this magic that we haven't learned yet, and it's the one that we haven't learned yet seems to be more powerful than anything we have learned.
Well, what's really cool also is that what this does for us as well is Ari is not just enigmatic. There's reasons behind what she does. She does all these things for a reason, and they're not just quirky. She is quirky, but she's quirky for a reason, and there's reasons behind what she does. It's great, and it's the funny thing about Kvothe as well. His capabilities get built out by what she's capable of, because many times it just seems like he's playing along, but it's his sleeping mind. I feel like she awakens in him that creativity, and that action in itself awakens his sleeping mind to then create and to sort of match her in a way. And I think. She's massive. It builds her out so much more. She's not just this enigmatic character who's on top of things, and he just kind of spends time with and goes back to his world. She looms huge. And
hey, Dan,
I guess she's the key. She's the key for us to understand. And build out what the shaping's going to be, and I have to assume we're going to get some more of this in book 3, and get more of the Fae. But all of that mystery and that ethereal quality, that what you just read is huge, and sort of building that out and making it more tangible, or as tangible as it could possibly be, I guess.
And so along those lines of book 3 and the possibilities, Dan, I'd like to ask you to speculate on the possibilities of what this could mean.
Well, that's the next part. I mean, it's another long section, but I think it's important to go through it because, you get the fact that you see that she was right. He was going to bring 3 gifts. She was right that he was going to come today. And then we see her shape. Like, she wanted to make this candle and it was going to take hours, but she was able to make it exactly how she wants immediately. And that's magic. And so, like, her knowledge, the thing that it most compares to me is like when Scarpy talks about Celatos was able to look into Haliax and he knew that Haliax had tried to kill himself and, he saw all the pain and despair in him. Like he could see his past, or Elodin is able to look into Kavoth and it seems like he knows things that he's gone through with the, 5 spades have been laid down. You have 3 in your hands. How many spades is that? And there's those kind of moments. And then also with the story that Hespe tells the group about Jax and the moon, when Jax goes and sees the hermit on top of the in the mouth of that cave, like he's able to like listen to inanimate objects and he can hear them and hear what they want and what they desire. And Ari has that type of quality where it's like a deep magic. But here's why all that is important. I think it's established that she's got some kind of clairvoyance and she has magical powers with shaping. But then why all that's important is you get first his clever candle, all Taberlin, all warm and stuffed with poetry and dreams. Second was a proper place, a shelf where he could put his heart, a bed to sleep. Nothing could harm him here. And the third thing, well, she ducked her face and felt a slow flush climb her cheeks, stalling. Ari reached out for the small stone soldier sitting on his bed shelf. Strange, she'd never noticed on the design upon the shield. It was so faint, but yes, there was the tower wrapped in a tongue of flame. No mere soldier, it was a small stone emir. Peering closer, Ari spied slight lines upon his arms as well. She did not know how she could have missed these things before. It was a tiny Siri day. Of course it was. It would hardly be a proper present for him otherwise. She kissed the tiny figurine and set it back upon the shelf. Still, there was a third thing. This time Ari did not blush. She smiled. She washed her face and hands and feet. Then she skipped quickly into port and opened up the holly bottle. With 2 fingers, Ari lifted out a single seed, the tiny berry bright as blood despite green Foxen's light. Ari scampered off to Van and peered into the mirror. She licked her lips and pressed the berry up against them, daubing it from left to right. Then she smoothed the berry back and forth across them. She eyed her reflection. She looked no different than before. Her lips were palest pink. She smiled. Ari returned to Mantle. She washed her face and hands and feet, excitement bubbling inside of her. Ari looked at his bed, his blanket, his bed shelf with as tiny a mirror waiting there to guard him. It was perfect. It was right. It was a start. He would need a place someday, and it was all here ready for him. Someday he would come, and she would tend to him. Someday he would be the one all eggshell, hollow, empty in the dark. And then, Ari smiled, not for herself, no, not ever for herself. She must stay small and tucked away, well hidden from the world. But for him, it was a different thing entire. For him, she would bring forth all her desire. She would call upon her cunning and her craft. Then she would make a name for him. Ari spun about 3 times. She smelled the air. She grinned. All around her everywhere was proper true. She knew exactly where she was. She was exactly where she ought to be. The fact that she is so confident that he's going to need a place, that he's going to come down there, he's going to be broken, and she's going to give him a new name. If that doesn't fucking happen, I will be shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like he's going to go to war, and she's going to put them back together. And then Devi's going to show up and be a threat. to Ari, and then Kote's gonna battle again. But whatever. I mean, that's yeah, I think that's foretelling us precisely what to expect. At least a good piece of book 3, and it's Ari is accepting this role.
I mean, it could be, that he has her change his true name, and she's a shaper, and she changes his true name, and that's why he doesn't have access to his alar, and that's why he's Kote, and then he's in the bar, and he's in the situation he is. He asked for this, but, now that he's got it, it's destroyed him.
What did she put on her lips?
She put a berry, and she gives him one of her gifts is she gives him a kiss on the forehead.
Right. No, I
so
didn't
to
know
her
if
it was significant. I don't know what it did, but to her it was significant.
It was very ceremonious. Like,
and he made sure that you didn't think it was like lipstick. I got that clearly because her lips were exactly the same color.
Yeah.
So it must have been some kind of a. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know exactly
obviously something
what it is,
her.
but she obviously thinks it's significant.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they do that in The Wise Man's Fear, the scene of, basically she's like, let's move in together, and Kote tears up, which and then it's very ceremonial, man. Like, and we have that, like you said, repeatedly, the proper young gentleman, and she's in how she is with Elodin, and how she kind of, well, we'll get to that, but it's a very interesting. Well, yeah, because of the shaping, it does almost feel like she's putting. I mean, in a way, it's almost like, well, this is her way of welcoming him. But because of the shaping and everything that's involved, you have to kind of wonder: did she put something on it? Did she?
Well, does she fundamentally change who he is? And that's why he's so fucking broken and distraught. I mean, she could have. She was doing a good thing for him, but that's why he's waiting to die, because he can't be himself again.
I'm more just talking about the kiss on the forehead. Oh. I'm wondering what happens here. It does something extraordinary.
It seems like she thinks she's doing something that's protecting him. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, you know what, Tim? That's what she's accepting as her role. She's saying, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to stay here. I'm going to create this little, nook for him, and I'm going to stay here until he needs me.
And like the candle is like, supposed to give him good dreams, and, she was like, he's got an abundance of anger, and this will help with that. And so like he's in the midst of the plumbob. And so, like, this candle could have been like a remedy, or something that would cure him. I can't remember if he uses the candle, so like I'm gonna have to look for that, because I can't. I don't, for whatever reason, I always forget to pay attention to that when I go through it. But now I'll have to make a concerted effort to pay attention.
I'm sure Fitz noticed that he got to finally use his pocket that is for candles. That was nice. It was just waiting this whole time.
Hey, Tim, what you were bringing, something just occurred to me when you were talking about that ceremonial, is that the ceremonial nature of what she did, and us talking about her being royalty and acting in that way. It's almost like she dubbed him with that kiss. He bent over. She said, "Bend down," or did he have to bend down? Either way.
Well, Kote says, or were in his mind, I closed my eyes and bent at the waist, wondering if she had made me a hat as well. She says, now close your eyes and bend down so I can give you your second present. And then he bends it, he's waiting, wondering if she's giving him Imperial's poontang to wear as a hat. And instead, I felt her hands on either side of my face. Then she gave me a tiny, delicate kiss in the middle of my forehead. And, it kind of made me, it almost made me feel like, like you're being knighted or something,
So in Catholic tradition, and I think in like England too, that it's like a blessing. When you touch someone in the middle of their forehead, it's like a blessing. So,
she's unlocking
so
that
much
third eye.
Yeah, it's I don't know. You said ceremonial, and that's what clicked for me. All this stuff. So, I don't know.
I mean,
that's.
I'm interested in the candle. I'm interested in this as well to kind of be more sensitive to what could have possibly, even a small nuance of change within Kavoth, if something could have been unlocked or bestowed upon him or what. It's so funny, man, because, the amount of times I've read the books and as I've slowly, gradually continued to realize there's more to Ari. I mean, you always know, even from the first read through, there's more to her. But there are all these quirks. You're not really sure how exactly to take her. And now it feels like, just with our conversation today, now it feels like even more she is making huge changes. She's exacting massive change in influence. I'm starting to assume within the story, and I do wonder what the candle foretells, because I can't remember. I do remember the candle, but I don't remember.
She thinks of it as like something that's going to protect him, to give him good dreams, to help with his anger and that kind of thing. She's looking at these gifts as like remedies, not as powerful weapons or something like that. It's more like remedies, protections, that kind of thing.
So, in today's terms, does she own a little bodega that sells crystals and sage?
Yeah, she's definitely selling fucking healing crystals.
Auri stones.
So
everybody's mocking the people that go there, and they're like, "No, I'm telling you, I bought this fucking healing crystal. I was paraplegic. Now I'm fucking running marathons." Like, oh, okay, yeah, sure you did, buddy. Like, no,
it
dude,
could be as simple as
this girl's. I don't believe in magic crystals. Her crystals are fucking magic, man. I'm telling you.
Everybody's like, yeah, dude, Jim has completely lost his mind. He swears on crystals and yeah.
He goes to this shop downtown, calls the lady who owns the place his little moon fae. It's really weird.
I was gonna say, dude, I'm telling you, ever since I started burning sage in my house, I'm so regular. Like, my bowels are on point. Ever since, man. Ever since. Had all these problems. Everything's much better.
So in light of all this stuff, I suddenly find it way more interesting that Elodin is there and it's seemingly that he's been invited by Ari.
No, definitely not that. But hold on, before we get there, I just a couple things. One, when he's like, "What's inside of it for the candle?" She's like, "Happy dreams. I put them there for you." And he's like, "Did you make this yourself?" She nodded and gave a delighted grin. "I did. I'm terribly clever." Not only one, we know like the happy dreams. She's not, again, like we talk about, like with her wordplay, she's not joking. She's like, these dreams, this candle will give you happy dreams. This will fix your dreams. And he's just like, thinks it's a game. And then when he's like, "Did you make this for me?" And she's like, "I did. I'm terribly clever." He doesn't realize how clever she fucking is. Like, she fucking did, she shaped that candle for him. She used magic to make that candle, and he has no fucking clue. So,
well, I like the way that he says it, though. He does say, or at least he thinks it, "I turned the candle over in my hands, a suspicion forming." I remember, like, reading that. In my mind, I do remember feeling like he had an appreciation. Like, there's more to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, just to say that, a suspicion forming. That's saying.
Well, you would think, like, like, where the hell is she getting candles? Like, well, yeah, she's not going to shops.
Well, yeah, and then also, I mean, if it's newly formed, I mean, again, I'm not a fucking candle maker, but you feel like you'd be able to kind of tell, like, something had happened. Be like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? So, I don't know.
Now, when I make candles, like, I mean, you can't tell any difference between, like, store-bought, you go to Walmart and get a candle, you get one of my freshly made candles, same thing.
There's no way.
Better even.
Well, I've seen I don't make candles. I'm just saying, like, if I did, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that is consistent with your approach to things. So yeah, okay. So but yeah, but go ahead. No, I was gonna say after she kissed him on the forehead, he kind of cries a little bit. You are special to me. Seriously, her face grave, like so she's not, she's being very, very formal. I want you to know I will always take care of you. She reached out tentatively, wiped at his cheeks. No, none of that tonight. This is your third present. If things are bad, you can come and stay with me in the under thing. It is nice there. You will be safe. So, she's like, let's move in together.
I love the two. He was like, thank you, Ari. I said as soon as I was able, you were special to me too. Of course I am, she said matter-of-factly. I'm as lovely as the moon.
Yeah, I love those.
There it goes again.
But those qualities about her make me like her so much because you feel like there's so many qualities about her that you get the feeling that she's like not a victim, but she's at risk of sorts because she could be locked in Haven. There's these risks involved. She's not really feeding herself that well. At least we're getting that from Kavos' mind. But it's those little things where it's like, dude, she has high self-esteem, which is kind of a nice, again, build out for the character. I love when she has those little moments where she talks like that. I've never read a character like her. She's fucking great.
Yeah, she's super original, and we also get a good nugget of information from the slow regard of silent things on her relationship with the moon. It seems to be that her fear of the moon is when she's out near Haven, where the moon is lighting up the sky, where someone might be able to see her and bring her to Haven. Because when Haven is out of sight and the moon is watching her, she thinks she gets comfort out of it. She feels like it's a old friend, and when she's making stuff down in the under thing, like she goes to a place where the moon shines through the grate, and she appreciates the moon. It's only when it is lighting her and making her seen underneath where Haven is right within her sight, that is her fear. So I think that the fear is same reason she's not going out during the day is she doesn't want to be seen. She don't want to be carted off to Haven. I think that's where her fear of the moon comes in. Not specifically the moon, but what the moon shining down on her could do to her.
Yeah, being seen. It's funny, the more you sort of drill down on her, the more practical she becomes. But I was going to say, do you think she's been in Haven? Do you think she escaped from Haven?
I don't think so. I mean, who knows? But I get the impression that she hasn't been, but she knows she's cracked, and she knows that's where
she knows how she appears. She knows how she appears to other people.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah, so I think it's just the fear.
Dude. I love. By the way, I didn't even mention it. I love the Seerday thing, man. Like, I gotta read. I keep saying I'm gonna read the Slow Regard of Silent Things again, but it was so long ago that I read it. Like, a lot of that stuff missed me.
Well, the great thing is, like on the Audible, you can put it at like 1.4 speed, and Rothfuss reads so slow that when you put it at like 1.4 speed, it's like reading normal, and so you'll knock that book out in like 2 hours. It's short. I know he read super short. I because I knew I was going to bring up a lot of this stuff today. I just read it, and I read it in like 60 to 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's short. Yeah, I mean, it's a novella, so I remember enough of it being short. It's just not fresh in my mind. But I'm a little bit surprised. I didn't know Rothfuss could read, so that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
he's like a Rembrandt. This guy.
He's a fucking Renaissance man over here.
Double threat, dude.
But yeah, no. Then Elodin comes in, and it wasn't like she definitely didn't. No one expected him. He's like, before I could respond, Elodin stepped around a large brick chimney as casually as if he were out for an afternoon stroll. The three of us stared at each other for a moment, each of us startled in our own way. Elodin and I were surprised, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ari grow perfectly still, like a deer ready to spring away to safety. So, like, none of them were expecting to run up on each other. They were all like, whoop, froze, and then interacted with each other from there. So, no, she was not expecting him.
Kvothe goes into such a protective mode from this point forward, because, I mean, we're in his mind. But it's just, he just keeps reiterating, like, he's trying to do, and then he's just telling Elodin and trying to lead him into, like, I love the dynamic between him and Elodin, because we don't know how much Elodin knows. We don't know how much time he spent with Ari already. So when Kvothe is, like, telling him what to do and then trying to be tactful at the same time, it's a really interesting, like, imbalance that goes on there. I just always love when Elodin's in the scene. He's such a wild card, you know, and just with everything he's capable of and his backstory that we don't really know wholeheartedly, or we don't know, all the details of it. It's all just big, interesting events and what he's capable of, and when he talks to people, when he looks into people, man. But he becomes much more real in this scene, you know?
Yeah.
The one part that did you guys get the sense when and I'm jumping ahead here, but when it happens about three or four times, you know, the first time when Ari has run back into the other thing and comes back out and Kvothe is nervous as hell, and Elodin puts his hand on Kavothe's shoulder and, like, calm down, dude, she's coming. Calm the fuck down.
Yeah, he's like then shaking and shit.
So then again, when Kvothe threatens him, and then again shortly thereafter when Kavothe's like, "Hey, she needs some stuff." Like, I don't know, it's just me being a nerd, but all three of those times, like, I got this sense of, because I'm endeared to Ari at this point, and so knowing that Elodin's not gonna rat her out. He's not there to put her in haven. He is going to get her the things that she needs. I'm like, get this sense of relief and, like, you know, like this really good feeling that Elodin's going to help her out.
Oh yeah. It's tough to, because you lose that feeling after you've gone through it a bunch, because you know that's exactly how it goes down. You already know that's the fact. But
that's a good
point. If you take yourself outside of it and you're going through it the first time, you would have that nervousness that Elodin's a wild card and he could, you know, put her in haven, and so you don't know that he's not going to do that.
That's a good point to bring up, because I do, once you've read through it, you forget. There are things that get lost on the rereads. There's so much to be gained that doesn't matter. It's outweighed many times over as far as I'm concerned. But that is one element that does get sort of lost a little bit. But yeah, it's a good point.
One of the other things I think that lends a lot of credence towards her being a princess is she goes, Master Elodin. Ari dipped one bare foot behind the other and tugged the edges of her ragged dress in a tiny curtsy. Elodin remained in moon-cast shadow of the tall brick chimney. He made a curiously formal bow in return. The fact that Kvothe described it as a curiously formal bow, I think, stands out, especially when you start to consider that she's a princess. I think Elodin has known her for years. I think Elodin knows who she is, and the fact that he's given her, like, a formal bow, I think, is another clue that she is the princess. At least one of them.
Yeah, I get that impression as well, that Elodin does know who she is. And he kind of hints at it through that bow, but also when he says, "Well, look, check out the big brain on Kvothe, giving her that name," like, kind of coming close to the truth, right? I like, these are really, really nice little hints that Rothfuss gives us, those little reveals to pull something out of, which is great. But I love this I love really all of it with Elodin. How they sort of are pitted against each other and they're all being careful. I love her check on him, man, where he's like,
yeah, I was
did you bring
going to say,
something for Kavoth?
I love
you didn't?
Ari's interactions with Elodin more than, Kavoth and Elodin in this situation, just because, we see Elodin just making everybody uncomfortable and on their toes and put them back on their heels, and then Ari comes fucking just strolling in with Elodin, and he's on his heels. He doesn't know what to do, and he's kind of off kilter, and it's the first time we've seen him be in those shoes versus, he makes everybody like that. So it's funny to see.
I really like Ari in this position. She's dictating terms. She's like, this is how it goes. You fucked up. You didn't bring. So like when she doesn't pour him a second drink, like all of those little, like she has this thing in her mind where she's like, no, not tonight.
Not tonight. Have you brought anything for Kavoth? This seemed to catch Elodin off his stride. He stood awkwardly for a moment, arms outstretched. I'm afraid I haven't, he said, but I don't imagine Kavoth has brought anything for me either. Ari's eyes narrowed, and she gave a tiny frown, fierce with disapproval. Kavoth has brought music, she said sternly, which is for everyone. Elodin paused again, and I have to admit I enjoyed seeing him discomfited by someone else's behavior for once. He turned and made a half bow in my direction. My apologies, he said. I made a gracious gesture. Think nothing of it.
Yeah, I love that.
Ari's immediately. Ari's not having it anyway. She like you said, she's dictating terms. So then she lays out how this thing's going to go, and then she's like, and then Kavoth's going to play music, and you're going to stay. And then, he does say that she makes it a question, but she commands it first.
No, I love it, man. It's like she's running this little show here. It's again goes to the formality and the fact that she's in charge of shit speaks to like her being royalty. She's not there for other people. Other people are there for her.
Yeah.
This is like, if this was what she was brought up as, this would be totally normal. This is how it works. But yeah, I love her. Thank you. Like he gives her the sinus fruit and she's, thank you kindly, makes another small curtsy. Now you may join us if you like. And if you behave, you may stay and listen to Kavoth play afterward. And then she does, tilt her head a bit, making a question. But I love that. Like this dude, was running the fucking show at the university. But I love that. And if you behave, and you behave now, I'll kick you the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
I love it, man. It's great. It's such a great, again, just like build out for her character in terms of where her head's at. It doesn't matter who's there. This is her world. Like the under thing and on top of things, this is her world, and he's butting in as well. So it's like, if you want to take place, you need to know your place. Yeah, it's great.
Another thing is that he gives her a sinus fruit, which Rothfuss brings up, and there's a scene where Kavoth is with Felurian, and he's talking about all the different things that he learned during the time he was with Felurian, about like all these different little facts that he was picking up from her. He's like, I learned 1,000 facts. You might think that's a lot, but 1,000 facts does you no good when you're talking about, learning an entire culture. And one of the things she taught him was that the gift of a single celis fruit. He's like, I learned you must never look at one of the thing with both eyes at once, and that a gift of a single sinus fruit is considered a terrible insult if given to one of the Belladari. So the fact that is in this book when he's with Felurian. Obviously, he could give a million different facts. He could make up whatever he wants, but he picked a sinus fruit. Devi's place smelled of sinus fruit. Elodin gives Ari a sinus fruit. I don't know what all that shit means. It could just mean that it's sinus fruit season, and so everybody's fucking walking around with fucking sinus fruits in their pockets. And
the fact that she does take.
I was just going to say, Kavoth says that it's expensive. It's basically something he can never afford.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that she actually does take offense to it, like, what, okay, this is a sinus fruit for me, what'd you bring Kavoth? it's not arbitrary. What you brought up.
I don't know what it means, but I'd be surprised if there's no significance to it. I don't know if it'll be like something big. It could be just something like Elodin is testing her to see if she, he doesn't fully know who she is or understand, like he's trying to figure shit out. Like, is she one of the Fae? Like something like that. Like maybe if I give her this gift and if she's, offended, it'll give me some knowledge. Could be like that. I don't know.
Well, I don't know what,
but I think there's something there.
What that thing was that you said to people who get offended, but it sounds to me like Ari's one of them.
It could be, but she doesn't seem to be like super offended by it, so I don't.
No, she got offended. I think it was more. It was more, what did
she even says it is lovely.
It was more that situation.
She's like, it is lovely, she declared, but Kavoth's things are lovelier still. And Elodin was great. He's like, that stands to reason, Elodin said.
Yeah.
I expect Kote is a nicer person than I am. That goes without saying, Ari said primly. I just want an entire book of Elodin and Ari.
Yeah. I would happily read.
That's the book about all-time greatest buddy cop story ever. Like two people that make everybody extremely uncomfortable, but also make each other extremely uncomfortable,
and are extraordinarily powerful in ways that we can't even fathom. Yeah, I love that. I love that little part as well. Yeah, I kind of wonder. One thing that occurred to me was the bringing of the sinus fruit and what you just brought up. It kind of feels like George Costanza bringing oranges to the Japanese television show.
It's so weird. Yeah,
you've forgotten what it's like to not have oranges. This fucking guy with the oranges.
They don't have access to oranges.
They live in New York City. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, it's funny.
Well, I wanted to dive in before we get to the. What are we starting on? Chapter 12? Yeah,
Chapter 12.
Before we get into Chapter 12, kind of after we discussed Chapter 11, I was kind of going through more of my thoughts, got on Reddit, was arguing with some people on there about different ideas, and I kind of fleshed out kind of my thoughts that I think add a little bit more to Ari. So since we just covered her, we might as well kind of tie that in to last episode. So one of the big things I didn't talk to you guys about in the last episode is there's a theory that Ari is the one who gave Kote the plumbob. And either Ambrose ordered it or she's following Ambrose for whatever reason, or that she did it on her own.
Why? Why
seems like Ambrose would have to be involved for the theory to make sense, considering he obviously knew Kote had been dosed with the plumbob when he was standing waiting in line to go to the admissions. But
for the record, in terms of how I first felt when I heard that, is I thought, because you could think, oh, that's interesting. I thought that's kind of absurd. That was my initial reaction to hearing.
Yeah, that was my reaction.
Why
to it as well?
Why her? And then I guess it's interesting to try to tease it out, but I just, right off the cuff, to me, it just doesn't fit her character. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make the book better. Yeah. But please go ahead.
So, and if you want to know, this is my initial reaction because this is new to me. Here it is. My shit pants, nips blasted. I'll get ready for all that, but this is my initial reaction. I don't believe it.
Yeah. No, I didn't, and I still don't. But there is reason that people believe it. In the slow regard of silent things, and in the wise man's fears, the woman who gives Kote the plumbob is dressed in burgundy. She's got bright red lipstick, and she might have blonde hair. I can't remember if it's blonde or not, but she's got curly hair, and she's wearing a burgundy dress. And so Ari in the slow regarded silent things, it's mentioned that she comes across a burgundy dress. She comes across gloves, which the lady, remember, she had the big long white gloves on. That's how she, her gloves were wet. That's how she actually dosed him. So she's got a burgundy dress. She's got gloves. She's got a pot of rouge. She's got a mirror. She's got a brush, and she's also got nutmegs, which the plum gives. The plumbob gives the smell of nutmeg and plum.
That's so all those details you just gave are in the slow regarded silent things, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right.
It's the only place you would find them is in the slow regarded silent things. So that is that's a partial reason why people would believe that, because if you're thinking about it, like all those things, if she was going to dress up as a Modegan woman and go to Anchors and portray this woman to dose Kvothe with the plumbob, she has the materials to do it. It would just, I think it would take, she's got to be a glamour or something, like similar to Bast, to be able to pull it off, because she's sitting directly in front of Kvothe. Ari is sitting in front of him,
especially him.
Yeah, and so that is, I'm trying to see if that woman, it says the curly hair, long skirts, tight waist, matched burgundy gloves.
I don't remember a single part of her description.
She's got blonde hairs.
I don't remember a single part of her description that made her sound anything that could be tied to Ari. Now, I get that she's under costume or whatever, she's glamour, okay, but there's not a single thing in that scene that hints at that. You know what I'm saying?
No, like it would be, she wore an elaborate burgundy dress. The burgundy would come in with long skirts, a tight waist, you could make sense of that, is Ari skinny.
Yeah.
And matching burgundy gloves that rose all the way up to her elbows. And she had, blonde hair that was curled. So there is some superficiality to that, but there's some semblance of where I could see why people would interpret it that way. So here's the big thing they look at, though, is they go through, and the time period of the slow regarded silent things happens during the plumbob event. There's debate on whether it happens on, some people have said the 4th day, which can't be the case. Some people say the 3rd. I say it's the 2nd day. So like day 2 for Ari is when I say the plumbob happens. Other people say it's day 3. And on day 3 in the slow regarded silent things, Ari cries. That's all it says about day 3. It just says Ari cries. So their argument is that Rothfuss just left out the part where she goes, dresses up as this woman, doses him, and then that woman goes out of that place bawling, crying. Yeah. And so Ari spends the whole day crying, and then she comes back to Kvothe, because she knew that she gave him the plumbob. That's the reason she showed up at his room while he was drugged, and she's trying to make things right. Maybe she was trying. Said she was going to give him something, so maybe she was, wanted to try to give him some kind of antidote or something like that. There's nothing in the book, because the only thing it says as far as that chapter goes is she just cries. So they're just tying things together. And so, I mean, that's the basic gist of it. She had all those things. They say, she's got power, so she could be a glamour. Then the crying, they attribute to her crying because of what she did. All right.
Can I just throw a couple of reactions out now that it's all there?
Yeah.
So I've seen some pictures from back in the 80s from glamour shots. Do you guys remember that? These ladies would go in there, dog, pig ugly, and come out looking like $100. So on that front, if she's a glamour,
I would say more like $60, maybe $72, never $100. Okay. It was heavy on the bangs, a lot of hairspray.
Yeah, a lot of hairspray, a lot of rouge.
Yeah. A lot of almost like smoke in the air. It was all hazy.
But So I understand, and you know that's not. Now that you say that, there's a lot of coincidences if it's not an actual reality, or however you want to take it. But my question would be why. So I'll tease that out just a little bit. She would have to be under some kind of. I'm with you in thinking that Ambrose is the main benefactor of the plumbob, so she would have to be under some kind of slavery or owe some kind of debt to Ambrose and his family. I'm not. If there's more to the theory, if there's more to why she would have anything to do with that, why of the drugging of Kote, please let me know. Otherwise, I don't. It seems far fetched.
Well, there's theory that not only is Ari Princess Ariel, but she was under the fake name of Tabitha when she went to the university. Tabitha was the girl that liked Ambrose and was running around in puppy love with him, and then she just disappeared. And
so that also
it could
doesn't
be that
fit her character for shit, because
no,
it does not strike me she would be attracted to someone like Ambrose from the way we see her interact with Kote. They're both,
but
they're both royal,
we're seeing her
both
post cracked.
Yeah, I get that.
We're seeing her post cracked, so we don't know what she was like before. So it's possible. There's not like a ton of evidence to point her as Tabitha, because there's only like one line in the book about Tabitha.
Yeah,
so there's not a lot of description of her, but that a lot of people believe that she is Tabitha, and so that's one way they tie in Ambrose, is that there's some kind of dynamic between those two.
That's
really
leap.
Interesting. Is I'm sorry, Tim, but real quick, Dan, I'm sure that I've heard you mention before that Ari was raped.
In the Slow Regarded Silent Thing, she talks about having your arms pinned down and the hot breath of a man on your face where he's got you pinned down or something. It lends you to believe that she was, likely raped.
Yeah, a lot of that coming together. I wouldn't. I'm not totally against it at this point. Now that you've said all these things, he doesn't mince words. Even if it's a red herring. He doesn't put things in that burgundy's a real obscure color. I guess not
very
totally,
specific.
but
yeah. Well, there's also like Lady Jael. She's mentioned in Chapter 5. That's Marie's, the fiddler, the mouthy fiddler bitch. Her patron is Lady Jael, and her colors are burgundy. So I don't know. There's nothing mentioned about Lady Jael, so she could be Modagan, and so it could have been Lady Jael, or it could have been someone associated with Lady Jael. Ambrose is obviously high up in nobility, so it wouldn't be surprising if Lady Jael was a Modagan, and so that was the person. And it's interesting that in Chapter 5 there's mention of a noble person whose colors are burgundy. And she's Lady Jael. It's a woman, burgundy colors, and then 2 chapters later, Modagan and Burgundy is the one that doses him. So that could be who it is as well. So he like many things, it's not as simple as there's only one possibility. There's multiple, but I think I can put a huge. Give a huge problem to the Ari is the one that dosed him, because I don't think the days line up. That now, if you work backwards, Ari sees Kote on day 6. She initially thought he was going to come on day 7, but he comes on day 6. She breaks the gears and she realizes he's coming today and not tomorrow, and realizes he's going to give 3 gifts. And so you get a sense that she's got some kind of clairvoyance or knowledge of the world, or at least Kote and his actions. So Kote sees her on day 6. That is the day of admissions as well. This is the same day he goes to through admissions. He sees Dinah, he sees Devi, then he goes and sees Ari. Now, after the plumbob experience, it is mentioned that the next few days were neither pleasant nor productive. The next few days. And so he describes the first day as he goes to the fishery, and he couldn't do the work there because he broke down in tears, and so he had to run out of there so people didn't think he was going cracked. Then he tried later that night, he tried to sneak into the archives through the under thing, but he freaked out when he was crawling through the tunnel, and he freaked out, and so he couldn't do that. And then it says, so I spent the next 2 days pretending I was sick and keeping to my tiny room. I played my lute, slept fitfully, and thought dark thoughts of Ambrose. So Rothfuss says the next few days were neither pleasant nor productive. He describes one day where he tried to get shit done, and then he says the next 2 days he pretended to be sick. So that's 3 days right there. So that's day 5, day 4, day 3, if we're working backwards. Okay, so the first day after the plumbob would be day 3. On day 3, that's when Ari cried all day. So that throws a big wrench in their argument because they're saying that she dosed him on day 3. And I'm saying that's according to what the book says as far as the days are concerned. He spent 3 days after he was dosed trying to get shit done, 2 pretending to be sick. Says a few days. It describes 3 days. I think that's pretty freaking clear as far as the timeline's concerned. And then after that, after the 2 days he spent being sick was admissions. And that's the day he sees Ari. So that's, day 6, 5, 4, and 3.
Maybe I'm confused because I'm not totally grasping it, but what if that day, Ari's not counting and that's why on the 6th day, it's actually the 7th, possibly. So
no. In the book, it goes through on day 1, this, on day 2, this, on day 3, I cried. Day 4, I did this. Day 5, I did this. Day 6, he comes. It's clear that the timeline is not, as far as her book, there's no discrepancy. No one, disputes her, counting of days. It's clear as can be. She goes, we're in her head for the entire days.
So that's a very practical reason why this doesn't line up. There's so many reasons contextually that this doesn't make sense for her character. This doesn't make sense in terms of what would Ambrose have to have on her for her to be compelled to do something like this. And then also, one of the glaring things to me that was brought up originally that you kind of touched on is if she made the plumbob, so they say the nutmeg, right? So if she made it, and then she shows up because she feels bad because she cares about him, she wouldn't bring an antidote? She's just there to be there?
Apparently there is no antidote for it, though.
Okay.
That Sim's an alchemist. If there's an antidote, why didn't they just go and find an antidote?
That's true.
I'd like to just digress back to what I said for real quick. And I know that you're not going to agree, but it does line up. If something happened on day 2 where Ari forgets about it because whatever if it's Ambrose, does something to her to make her do that to Kavoth. And the other thing is that's the only reason why
fits like in like the way it goes through her book. Like I woke up in the morning on day 1, and then this is the list of things I did during the day, and then at night I went to bed. On day 2, I went and did all these things in the morning and the afternoon, and then at night I went and did this, and then, the end of that day. On day 3, I cried. On day 4, I woke up in the morning, went through and did all these things during the day, and then at night did this and this. And it goes through the entire days. So there's no way it's like, Rothfuss wouldn't do that where it was like, tricked ya. She was saying she did all these things, during the day, but she didn't really do it. It was all in her mind. I made it up.
I'm saying she really did it. She just forgot about that day. Like she totally selectively forgot the day that she dosed Kavoth, and it took her another day of crying too before she got
but that's that would be the absolute garbage writing where
that's super
Rothfuss, there's nothing in there that would suggest that there's an entire day he left out. And, Kavoth actually did come on day 7, so she doesn't have any magical. There was no clairvoyance or anything like that. She's just forgot a day, and I just didn't tell you guys, and I'm never going to tell you guys, and you're never going to figure out she forgot a day.
So the other thing is, it makes sense. Finally, if Ari did it, would finally make a little sense why the lady who did dose Kavoth was crying. That didn't make sense to me either.
Well, that made sense to me in the sense that she had to do it. She didn't want to do it, and she had to do this thing because Ambrose has something on her. That makes sense to me. If it was Ari, so
yeah,
again,
and it's something awful to do. Like, I would feel
okay, but
horrific if I was doing something like that to someone, some stranger.
If it's Ari and she's as sensitive as she is, and she cares for Kavoth as much as she does, she's just going to move on and do other things the rest of the week, the next day. Like it's not a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like these things don't line up, man. It doesn't work with her character. So you could say she's cracked and she's like a sociopath, and then she just shuts it off. But again, that also doesn't fit her character in terms of like how sensitive and thoughtful she is throughout the books.
No, and beyond just the speculation, I think, there's more evidence that points to something else was going on. So one, the days are not wrong. There's no just like Rothfuss wrote in, and there's a missing day that Rothfuss didn't tell us about. He wouldn't do that. I mean, there's clearly six days, and so
he wouldn't go as far as explaining it if he's gonna then pull that back as not being worth pointing out. Why would he go through the point?
No, especially for a guy that's like, I hate twists, and that's not his style, and that's not even a twist. Careful. That's just like a lie.
Well, and he's clearly exactly, lied. And he's clearly careful, so he's going to go do something that intricate, or lay it out that detailed to then have it not to have it be false. Have it not be accurate information just to throw you off the scent. I would argue that the burgundy color would be more to throw you off the scent, or to at least give people enough reason to conjecture about it, or to go off on, well, what about this? This could be a possibility. I would argue that before I would argue the days. I mean, let's
just take the days as that there's not a missing day. That's not anything anybody talks about. So let's just deal with the theories that people got on it. So if we work backward, like I said, day 6, Kavoth goes through admissions. He sees Ari. He spends 2 days in his room pretending to be 6. That's day 5 and day 4. On day 3 is when he tries to get things done and goes down to the archives and gets scared at night, and then that's the end of that day. So on day 2 is when he gets the plumbob, according to what I'm saying. So if we go through what happened on day 2 for Ari, it's a long ass day for her. This is when a pipe busts and she's got to fix that. And she, at some point though, during the day, she starts to get like dizzy. And so but just as she was finishing, when she lifted up her arms to push her cloud of hair behind her, Ari staggered just a bit, all of a sudden dizzy. After it passed, she walked slowly to Cricket and took a long, deep drink. And then, you can interpret this as that she was hungry. She ended up eating after that, and she just all of a sudden got, faint because she was hungry. And she's obviously a waif of a thing, so that makes sense. But it could be that this was the same time that Kavoth got the plumbob, and she was feeling something was wrong. And the reason I speculate on that is because it gets real weird in the second book after that. And it aligns well with what's going on with Kavoth during the day that he gets the plumbob. So he gets the plumbob, then he goes to admissions, and he starts feeling off. The air smells weird. And then he realizes Ambrose drugged him when he talks to Ambrose, and he panics. And he runs to Will's room, and he's in a fucking panic, and it takes Will to calm him down. So here's what's going on with Ari during what I believe is these moments that he's in a panic. She starts to panic. And so it goes, finally, she backed around a corner and sank trembling to the floor. She needed everything to come all apart around her. She needed to get back to Mantle. She needed her most perfect place. There, the stones were safe under her feet. there, everything was sweet and proper and true. She was in a full blown panic. And two other things about it. She mentions the air seemed strange and strained. Something was wrong. But now her skin was all ashen and sweat. She closed the heavy door. She checked the latch and leaned her slender weight against it, pressing her hands and forehead. She tried to breathe more deeply, but her heart was stiff and tight inside her chest. There was something wrong about the air. Same time, Kvothe is like, what the fuck is that? Where is that smell coming from? And then when Kvothe, he talks to Sim soothes them, all of a sudden Ari just, she goes into her room and then she calms down. She's still, everything's not perfect or anything with her, and shit's a little off, but she calms down, just as Kvothe calms down. I think that aligns perfectly. Then, later that evening, she thinks she hears Kvothe playing music, and she goes to the roofs to see if he was there, and of course he wasn't. But I think what this is hinting at is that she was feeling drawn to Kvothe. That's why she felt like she heard him. She's like, shit, is he here? And she got a gift and ran up to the roof, and she's like, no, he's not here. Must be hearing things. And I think she was sensing that something was wrong with Kvothe. She was feeling drawn to him. And then finally, the way day 2 ends is she visits this farm and this graveyard, and at the end of the chapter, she's eating outside, which it fits perfectly with. She's got this maniacal, happy expression on her face. Let me see if I can find exactly what it says. But she went back to the boneyard then and climbed atop a large flat slab, back straight and smiling. Ari made a proper dinner for herself, to soft brown bread with just a hint of honey. For after she had pine nuts, fresh picked from the cones, each one a tiny perfect treat. All the while her heart was brimming. Her grin was brighter than the slender crescent moon. She licked her fingers too, as if she were some tawdry thing, all wicked and unseemly. She's having a great old time. That's how the chapter ends. And then the next lines are, on day 3 she cried, or she wept, or one of those lines. So she goes from this extremely happy moment to crying. So what I posit is happening, she's eating outside, and I think on her way back, because she was feeling drawn to both, I think she took those gifts that she had, and I think she was going to go and give him a gift. And so she comes to his window and she's like, Kvothe, I brought you. There was a moment of silence. Then she said, oh. And then she spends the night with, Kvothe, who's, the center of her world, who's just broken to pieces, bawling. And then the next day she cries. And I think that makes much more sense, that she was having the panic attack the same time Kvothe was fucking discovering that he's under the plumbob. And when she's outside at night, that it would make sense that she would come back, check on Kvothe after she's already hearing things, thinking she senses Kvothe out there, that she went to give him a gift. And the fact that she would have gifts while she's got this food and stuff that she just collected, she has gifts on her, something she could give him. Whereas the other theory, there's nothing. We're left to just completely guess at what the gifts would be. And my theory, she has gifts at hand. The other theory, there's no gifts mentioned, and there's no hint of a gift in the next books of what she might have been bringing to his room. So I think that holds up much cleaner to the theory. And then in chapter 4, she smells nutmeg, which again, Kvothe is, going through the plumbob experience, smelling nutmeg. So I think that aligns much better.
Yeah, I have to agree. In terms of the timeline, the events, and everything else I've already said about Ari, why initially, just even when I hear the theory, it's like, it's the idea of someone. There's so many other characters that it would be more likely. It would actually be more likely that it would be Denna than it would be Ari. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just you're picking the one character that to me is the least likely to do this. And we don't have a lot of female characters to draw from, but still, it's. But in that, again, Rothfuss writing, he he pushes people in this direction because of everything else we've talked about and all these different connections that you can make. So it brings you to want to speculate, and who's this person? Who's this person? That's why Tabitha becomes somebody. And, it's because it's all of these things do seem to have an interconnectedness. So people try to make those connections, but who knows, man? Maybe whoever drugged him is in book 3. Maybe it's someone we haven't met yet. Maybe it's someone we'll never meet again, but I don't believe it's Ari.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, prior to this, I would have thought it's someone we'll never meet again. The coincidences of it are interesting, and I'm at your mercy because, or anybody's for that matter, because I have to read the Slow Regard again with a little more understanding of it. That's all I can say about it.
One of the problems is that Rothfuss, the way he wrote it, there's got to be a mistake in his days, because he says when Kvothe goes and gets his drawings, he says Kvothe drew felling, which is the 8th day, and then Fela drew kindling, which is the 10th day. And then Kvothe traded with Willem, and Willem said, like, oh, mine's a day sooner. I'll trade you, and I'll pay you whatever, like a couple jots. They worked out a deal.
Take Simon in a game, yeah.
So Kvothe should have had the 7th day, which is Cheyenne. But then Will says, what can you do with 5 days except fret and thumb twiddle? Which that doesn't make any sense, because if you're talking 5 days, that's days 1 through 5. That would be 5 days. It's, this is on day 1 in the morning, day 1. So he's got 5 days, and then would do admissions on Hepton, not Cheyenne.
The 6th day.
Right? And he had to do it on Hepton because there's 3 days where he's, not going. 1 day where he tries to go out and can't do shit, and then 2 days where he's in his bed. So there has to be 3 days between when he was supposed to go through admissions and when he went through and kindling. So you would have the 7th, 8th, and 9th day is when he's laid up and can't do shit. And so the 10th day is when he goes through admissions, and that's when he sees Ari, which would be her 6th day. So, but because Rothfuss, I think the mistake is that Will should have said, 2 days before you, not 1 day before you. But regardless, whatever theory you want to support, the days don't, though that moment plus the amount of days that he's in his room, they don't line up. One of them, something in the text is wrong because the days don't line up either way.
Maybe we should check my book to see if my book is more accurate than the others.
Good idea.
That was the case. But that wasn't the name of the wind. We don't know about the Wise Man's Fear if that one's more accurate.
Yeah. No, so. I think there's just a mistake. And I think that's where this comes down, is because the people who think that Ari did it believe that Kvothe was supposed to go through admissions on the 7th day, Cheyenne. So Ari would have dosed him on her day 3.
And then that works with
if that's the case. Timeline, but but it like I said, it can't be, because he goes to admissions on the 10th day and he gets dosed on the 7th day, and there's 3. If he gets dosed on the 7th day, then there's only 2 days in between, not 3. But he says a few days and then goes through 3 different days. So there has to be a 3-day gap between his original admissions that he was supposed to go through when he got dosed and when he went through with fellas. Well, he had to have gotten dosed on the 6th day.
There's also the additional, the days, there's something to that. But again, we just look at everything else. Look at who she is. Look at what the motivational factors would have to be to force her into this. And then it also brings up the question of, it is interesting that this person that does something.
So think about this. So she's dressed up as a Modegan, going out during the day, and she's talking to anchors, and then she's in a bar. She's going in front of Kvothe. He has no clue. She's got a Modegan accent. She's all fucking sexy as shit, and
like glamour shots.
Yeah. She's got her glamour shots. and fucking looking like a fucking Ben Franklin, and exactly like Ben Franklin, even every detail, sexy as shit.
Yeah, he's super sexy.
But like that doesn't fit Ari's character arc
Dude,
at all. Like
so
if Rothfuss wrote that, it's so
ridiculous.
cheap because we've seen her like she can't be around anybody. She was like a freaking rabbit. She's scared to go outside if the moon is out because it might shine on her.
Well, I could see
like,
what
it doesn't make sense.
Someone would possibly say to that is, well, she's acting, so she's in a character role. So then she gets to hide.
We're in her head.
We're in her head. I understand. I'm just saying that's what someone could possibly say. Again, the huge problems are it violates almost anything that we've read about her and how she's been built up thus far. Also, I think a big part of what people are doing is it makes it really interesting because it's such an evil sort of, and it's such a big event that occurs. Who could have done this and why? And it seems like, Ambrose is behind it and all that, but, well, we know that, but we also, but it makes people want to understand more and want to make a connection. I just think they're making the wrong one, especially, again, if they're going at Ari. But then with the Burgundy and all this other stuff, making those connections and trying to do it, I think it's also that window of time. Because when you look at the slow regard of silent things and you lay those across each other in terms of the time, then it's like, oh, well, then this could be it. So then they just want it to be it. And then it's like this and this and this makes it all work. But the problem is it's on its face. You think no, absolutely. And then that also, I find that motivates people to even further want it to be. Because on its surface, it just doesn't make sense. So then there's even more motivated to, but that's why it's so interesting. Yeah, but it doesn't make sense for the character he wrote. So it's sloppy.
Well, it definitely wouldn't. She would. There's no way she could be acting because we're in her head. It would have to be something, and what you just told me would lend to that she was drugged, and this drug, whatever it is taking over. She ends up forgetting, being coaxed then after she was drugged by.
That's even worse to me.
I'm with you guys. I'm just playing it out.
Yeah,
no, I hear you. Yeah, but
one of the things, what I think, if I'm right, and I think I'm much closer to being right than them on this one.
What else is new on this one?
Yeah. But if I am right, I think the way that book ends is that she seems to have some kind of clairvoyance. She has something where the world speaks to her. And I think this would lend even more to that Kavoth, when he's in a panic, she's in a panic. She's trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. Why does the air feel weird? Why does it smell weird? There's something wrong. There's something wrong with Kavoth. She goes and sees him. She thinks she hears him. She's being drawn to him. There's something that's connecting her to Kavoth, and I think that lends more. She finds a burgundy dress, the rouge, the mirror, the brush, the gloves, and there's the nutmeg. I think this is more, to me, is like the hermit in the mouth of the cave that talks to Jax, who has an infinity for things. Like he can look at that rope and he's like, this rope says you've been biting on it and chewing on it and trying to pull it apart, and he's got that weird ability to like sense what's going on in the world. I think Ari, I think what it's doing is demonstrating how in tune she is with the world, how connected she is to it, and also that Kavoth is the center of her world, clearly.
Well, the slow regarded silent things makes that very clear that she's super in tune with that. I mean, she sees deep into every little thing that she comes across with. And I think that's also a big part of the reason why she can't interact with other people. And she's damn sure not walking into anchors and just turning all that off and just playing a role and just walking around like Meryl Streep all of a sudden. Like it's just, and it also doesn't endear you to her. It gives her more complexity if it were true, but not in a positive way. She'd have to end up being the villain in book 3.
It just changes her character. I mean,
and that's not a plus.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
I mean, it's not her character growing or it's just rewriting her.
It's a denigration.
It's just rewriting her, making her something completely else without, where it wasn't earned. She can just act. She can make herself become Modegan and
so that
put on a show and go out in the world, I guess. Like there's nothing stopping her from going out in the world. She's just got to put on a costume, I guess.
I mean, you know what the worst part of it would be? A bit of if it was true, the worst part of it would be that she is also vulnerable to Ambrose's wiles. That would make it
exactly
terrible for me.
Well, yeah. So if that's why I say denigration. It brings more complexity to the character. There is that, but it's a negative, man. And so be it. I mean, authors can do that, and when they do it, I mean, a lot of times it's going to be a plus because you're frustrated. You don't want it to happen. And George R. R. Martin comes to mind, but in this case, it's not. It fights with everything we've read thus far to such a degree that it's just like, so I've been bamboozled thus far with everything I've read about her, and all this endearment is a fallacy. It's weak, man. Weak. So this goes back to what we've talked about. If you're going to have a theory, it should be better for the story.
Yeah, if there was hints, like if there was like little hints where Kavoth noticed she seemed to be acting or playing a role or something, or like when we were in her head, like we noticed things.
That's the biggest problem.
Then I wouldn't have an issue with it because then it would be like, okay,
because he's earned it.
Yeah, there's breadcrumbs. Yeah. But if you just there's no breadcrumbs going from to connect how she's portraying this Modegan woman, and you wrote an entire novella during this time when she does it, and you didn't put any breadcrumbs. She obviously, you got the Burgundy and all those, but those are superficial clues. Those aren't like direct clues that she would be able to pull this off. So there's no breadcrumbs to show how she would be able to pull this off. Why?
What's the motivating factor?
Then it's like, no. Then you didn't earn it. You didn't build that.
Well, then it's just a twist, and it's lame. It's pretty lame. I mean, again, the only thing that I could say is it does bring a little bit more complexity to the character. But if it's not a positive, if it doesn't endear you further, because she's one of the biggest sources for all of us to be like endeared to a character. She feels like our little sister or something. So that all goes away with this. It's whack.
It would answer the question of what the betrayal is too. I'm just saying, if it were true, it would answer the question of what the betrayal is.
Yeah, but there'd have to be an unveiling and I mean, this whole time she's like,
I mean, you could do it. I mean, he could do it, and I just think it would lower my opinion of the books rather than, be like, whoa, can't believe Ari's, got this, dark underbelly that we never, that we have heard about, but now we know it's, she does have this darkness. Okay, I mean,
it's one thing.
I mean, you're good luck on making that something that where I'd read that and be like, that's fucking amazing. Because to me, like when I hear it, I'm like, no, that sounds like garbage writing.
Yeah, it's one thing for her to be strict with Elodin and not give him another drink. It's another for her to poison Kavoth. Like, come on, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what else do we have?
Like, why would she do that? Like,
well, I was going to say, what else do we have thus far from her that, well, and I guess you could say this would be one of the ultimate betrayals for Kavoth because it's coming from Ambrose. And Ambrose already is like the guy that he most despises. And, in these chapters coming up, we see him with Denna, and how bad is that for Kavoth? He can't pull himself out of fucking shithole, his mental shithole for days. So
I pretty much felt the same way as he did, by the way, when we saw them two or her get out of his carriage, because that's where we are.
That's out of nowhere. That's an out of nowhere kicking.
I was so disgusted.
Yeah.
I was so disgusted.
But that's kind of what I was saying.
And he's wearing his pedophile little boy's hat.
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying. That gives it another layer. If Ari is the thing that was corrupted to then lead to Kaboth getting getting drugged, so it does make it even that much more worse. But we've already made the case. I mean, why that would be? I mean, so this is again one of those things that if the theory ends up being correct, and it would be unfortunate unless book 3 has some real gymnastics and fireworks to make this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, because maybe Rothfuss could do it, but I don't see how at this point.
Well, but the novella would have had to do something a little bit different.
Yeah,
he had the opportunity there. So
yeah,
that's a problem. So it's interesting to talk about, I guess.
That theory, I think, pretty well hashed it out. But so if any of you fans who still disagree with me, well, you're not that smart, I guess. That's all I can say.
Or bring it on. I mean, what else is there? What else you got to say? You got something to say about the Rouge? Something else?
I'll pop off my bra and blast my nips, man. We bring it.